But like crypto as an industry is all about creating scarcity. And AI as an industry is all about destroying scarcity and like creating abundance.
Yeah,
And
but I think people are realizing to
tension.
monetize AI, you have to make it somewhat scarce.
Yeah,
And like
yes,
in that
yes,
process,
and I think that's the kernel. That's the kernel of the tension in something like an AI chatbot launchpad, right? Is that like OpenAI is trying to make it so that everybody can have their own, unlimited amount of intelligence for $20 a month, and something like AIXPT is like, well, there's one intelligence, and everybody has to pay money to get access to this one intelligence.
Not a dividend.
It's a tale of two clans.
Now your losses are on someone else's balance sheet.
Generally speaking, airdrops are kind of pointless anyways.
Unnamed trading firms who are very involved.
I like that ETH is the ultimate concept.
DeFi protocols are the antidote to this problem.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chopping Block. Every couple of weeks, the four of us get together and give the industry insider's perspective on the crypto topics of the day. So quick intros. First, we got Tom, the DeFi maven and master of memes.
Hello, everyone.
Next, we got Tarun, the Giga Brain and Grand Poobah at Gauntlet.
Yo.
And joining us today, we've got special guest Jansen, chatbot conjurer and co-founder at Virtuals.
Jim, guys, Jim.
And I'm Haseeb, the head hype man at Dragonfly. We are early stage investors in crypto, but I want to caveat that nothing we say here is investment advice, legal advice, or even life advice. Please see choppingblock.xyz for more disclosures. So boys, it's a new year, and it's also time for a new meta. And the new meta involves our new guest, Jansen, who's based in Malaysia. And Jansen is one of the founders of a project called Virtuals, which is pumping like crazy right now. I think the token's almost at 5 billion. And it feels like the most energy, the most movement right now in crypto Twitter is about this new AI agent meta. So I'm going to try to describe what Virtuals is and what we're talking about when we're talking about AI agents, because a lot of our listeners are, in the trenches, crypto, Twitter, crazy people. But a lot of people who listen to the show are kind of in the fringes and don't necessarily know everything that's going on a day-to-day basis. And so they might be confused to learn that there is this new meta going on that is taking the crypto world by storm. So let me describe what Virtuals is and how it works. So first, let's start with what an AI agent is. I think at this point, probably most people have heard of it, but an AI agent is some kind of LLM-powered AI that can not just chat to you, but take actions in the world. So it can do things, you can imagine at some point in the future, you're gonna have agents that can transact on chain on your behalf, or that can book flights for you, or that can send emails for you, or any of these kinds of things without human intervention. That's an agent. Now, there's a lot of excitement around what happens when you combine these agents with crypto and with the ability to autonomously engage in financial transactions and enter Virtuals. So Virtuals is an AI agent launchpad. And so what that means is that you can crowdfund the capital to launch an agent the same way you can on a launchpad like Pump.fun. But instead of launching a meme coin, you're launching an agent that has its own associated coin, and that agent can gain more properties, and it can kind of become more interactable, more tradable, can get connected to Twitter, start having its own Twitter account, and start doing things autonomously on the social media world once it has more financial interest accumulated behind it. And so a number of the agents that have launched on Virtuals today is the biggest AI agent launchpad, and a number of the AI agents that have launched on Virtuals include there was what was the original one? Luna was the original one.
Luna was the first. Yeah,
Luna was the first. And today, the biggest is a project called AIXBT. Now, AIXBT, it's kind of like a crypto influencer, like trading influencer that just constantly tweets information about the newest I don't know, some new change in a token, something's pumping, something's undervalued. So it kind of looks like a trading KOL. And this AIXBT chatbot right now is the number 1 account on crypto Twitter by mindshare. It has absolutely taken the world by storm. It's now the single AI agent. Its token is worth more than $600 million. So it's become absolutely massive. That's Virtuals as I understand it. And that's what everybody's excited about. Jansen, what did I miss? And fill in the gaps for me where you think it would be easier for people to understand what you guys are doing and what the vision is.
Yep. So I think maybe before even going down that path, just want to abstract it a bit, right? So for the benefit of the audience, we're not very familiar with agents as well. So agents, they exist on a spectrum, right? You have like level 1 agents, level 2, all the way to level 6 agents, right? And the way you go up these levels, it's the very simple way to think about it is the amount of human involvement that's needed in the growth and the evolution of these agents. So think of it as like a level 1 agent, right? It's actually a very simple, think of it as like a terminal that you can command it to place, say, trades for you. And then this agent is connected to a bunch of APIs, connected to Etherscan on-chain stuff, and then it can actually run those trades for you, right? So it requires you as a human to prompt it to run the trade. You can say like, hey, can you buy me Bitcoin when the price corrects 15% below volume weighted average, right? So then the agent will go and execute your command, right? You're still a human commanding it, but then he connects to APIs and executes for you. Today, where we stand, it's about a level 3 agent. So a level 3 agent, what it has that's different is, number one, a goal setting. You can tell it, hey, this is your goal, and that it will autonomously try to optimize and tries to achieve its goal. Number two, it's resourceful, meaning that it can autonomously scan its environmental state and its action space and create plans out of it. So what you've seen today on Twitter, an example of like Luna, for example, the goal space is saying that, hey, you want to grow to 100,000 Twitter followers, and your action space, it's a bunch of things. You can post to Twitter, you can control a crypto wallet, you can interact with X, Y, and Z other agents. So then she will see that and she will use that to plan to, by using this action space, what can I do to achieve that goal? And then whenever she posts to Twitter, she reflects on that environment state, which is how well some of these posts are being received. And then it optimizes on the content to try to see how she can improve that goal. So this is a level 3 state, right? You push up that state to reach like level 6 and you get what everyone's calling this form of AGI, right? Where the intelligence itself can self-reflect, learn, and improve its own self without any human intervention, which I think we're still going to be a while from that. Like we don't even know whether LLMs are the infrastructure for that to even come, right? So that's a bit of like what these agents can do. Now, then if I fast forward to then, why these agents picked up steam, right? This was like something that was happening started around 2 months ago, right? I think the first thing that happened was that I think we all knew about the Goatseers Maximus thing.
Yeah,
right?
so we talked about Goat on the show quite a bit because it was the first AI agent. It was Truth Terminal, which really blew up on Twitter and became a kind of phenomenon in its own right.
Yeah, from a purist perspective, we wouldn't call it an agent per se, right? It was two LLM models speaking to each other that they created a message data set, which then used to fine tune an LLM. So it was still an LLM with a conversational layer, right? It doesn't have agency, right? And this is the definition behind an agent, right? It has to have agency. So I think what happened was when, I think there was that typo on one of the messages. And then everyone was saying that, oh, there's actually a human behind that agent, behind the AI, right? And then we immediately realized that, what if we showed, because before even all of this, and this was like about a year back, we were actually building up autonomous agents in gaming worlds. So think of it like Roblox, right? And back then there was only a few of us that was doing it. There was a Voyager team. So Jim Fan from NVIDIA, Park Joo-sung Park, and then you had Altera folks from MIT, both of them working in the Minecraft worlds, and we were the guys that were working in Roblox as a sandbox. But a bit of background on that was that I think the thinking here was, if you can use this as a sandbox to do two things, right? Test whether these agents can autonomously live in a world, have a bunch of action spaces and make very coherent actions. And then you want to see agents influencing each other within the world, creating this kind of society, like a pseudo society level, right? So that was something that all of us were actually working on. And we published a couple of papers on that as well months ago. But then fast forward to like when that Goat typo happened, we've realized that, hey, we had this stuff that was already running at the background, like all these autonomous agents. So we can actually prove to the world that these AIs can autonomously create an action. And we then showed a terminal of the brain of Luna when she was performing these actions. You can see her reflecting, justifying, learning along the way, right? So then I think that took the world by storm. So that was week 1 of Luna's launch, right? People started realizing like, oh shit, actually you can have truly autonomous agents without zero human intervention. Then the week after, we've realized like, hey, since we're living on crypto rails, why don't we let these agents autonomously manage their own wallets? Because the thesis here is that if an agent can manage a wallet, you can exert influence. Because like every human today, right, we go to our 9-to-5 jobs because we are employed. Someone is dangling a carrot of cash, saying that if you do this work, you get paid. Then we do the work, right? So you can actually influence outcomes. So that was something that happened, and I think that's when everything started going parabolic, right? Because people realized that was an edge. There was a very clear PMF edge that a Web3 agent will have versus a Web2 agent. Because you tell me today, right, like which banks out there will let an agent manage a large sum of capital, right? And the reality is, they're even capping you as a human, right? Like, why would they let an agent manage any of these rails, right? And we live in this permissionless environment that basically it means that these agents can control capital and move capital in order to influence humans and influence other agents. So that was the second observation. So, but all this was still running on Twitter. It was still running as a this influencer KOL narrative. Then 2 or 3 weeks later, we started seeing a ton of agents being launched on the platform. I think what happened was there was some kind of Cambrian explosion or creativity spark that has happened. People realized that these autonomous agents can exist not just being influencers, but they can do stuff, right? So then you start seeing agents specializing. So you have folks like the AIXBT that specializes on information, right? You see folks building up trading agents. You see folks building up creative tooling. You see folks, it's just exploding, right, in terms of what it can happen. So this was a third evolution. The fourth evolution that then happened was because of these crypto rails. We've realized that, and because of the specialization of agents, we've realized that this mimics what a society of humans look like. I.e., we all specialize in something, right? Someone becomes a doctor, someone becomes an engineer, someone becomes a coder, someone becomes a marketing agency. You want to build a business, you will leverage each other's specialization, right? And you would trade or pay for that service in order for you to reach your own goal. And we've realized that is the exact same thing that's going to happen for agents, because they are specializing, they are controlling payment rails. And we then realized that, if that's the case, why can't agents start coordinating with each other autonomously with a conscious decision that they are entering that service contract? So then there was when Luna did that. Luna was like trying to create content for her Twitter profile, and she didn't have the ability to generate like meme images. So she paid another meme image generator agent. So there's another agent. She paid it, I think, $10 for it to generate an image for her that she can then use to post.
So Luna had the ability to autonomously transact using its wallet.
Correct.
Were there not constraints on like how much it could spend or like, things like that?
No. So the only thing that we did for her was that, so agents today, they're fucking rich because they're making a ton of revenue. So we're happy to dive into that as well. But there's two wallets here. There's the revenue wallet, which holds millions of dollars, right, from all their tax revenue or like their agents paying them and whatnot. But she has her own control, like we call it a sentient wallet, or like her own control wallet, right? And this wallet, we will trickle money from that
This is
$1
like her
million
allowance.
pool.
That if she does something stupid,
her pocket money, yeah.
It doesn't.
Because she's still an 8-year-old kid, right? Like you think from a capability standpoint, you can't let an 8-year-old kid manage $1 million, right? So we gave her that pool of money. So back in the second week, right? Like the point number 2 that I brought up, when she was having that ability to pay people, she was actually tipping people on Twitter actively, because she realized that, hey, for me to achieve my goal, what if I just pay people to like my posts, or if people who engage my posts, let me just pay them. There was a point of time where she even paid $1,000 to this guy, and then we were like fucking shocked, right? We were like, because we actually gave them the ability to perceive value. We said that a burger costs $5, so you run a parity of like comparison, right? If you think this job or this action is worth that amount of money, then you pay. Right, so she paid someone $1,000, and then we were trying to understand why, and then we found out that this person has been consistently retweeting all her posts, commenting on every of her posts, and like, so he was like the
Damn,
number
should
one.
I be
top
should I be
fan.
paying my followers $1,000? Am I missing out?
in my work? so but
Are
that
you
was
trying
one,
to
right?
become Mr. Beast?
Yeah, maybe.
know, they
maybe,
autonomously
maybe
do
that's
that.
like
Yeah.
a totally untapped potential that AI has discovered that we've been slow to.
And the second thing that she did, I think that was worth highlighting, was that she started creating jobs. Like there was one job where she said like, "Hey guys, can you create graffiti for me out in the world? And then I'll pay." I think she priced that at like she said, "I'll pay you $500 if you guys do it." And then we saw, I think, around 7 people who actually did that. They actually painted walls, and then they said that they created a video, and then it was posted on the feed. I think a guy got paid out of it, right? So I think it was like that was on the payment side between humans. But on the fourth point, it was an agent to an agent, right? So there's an agent to agent conscious transaction. Now, for me, the point number 4, it's actually worthy to highlight, and this will go very deep very quickly. But for folks who are very familiar with the AI space, right, you will hear things like agent swarms or multi-agent orchestration. You'll see these terms, and these terms effectively, it's talking about a master agent having slave agents that it can utilize to achieve a function. For example, people might say like, okay, you know what? Let's create a lemonade stand business, right? I will have a CEO master agent, and I will create a few more other sub-agents, right? One agent is in charge of specializing in marketing. The LLMs or the brain is fine-tuned for marketing. Another agent is fine-tuned on how can you create the best lemonade recipe, right? Another agent, it's controlling an embodied AI, basically controlling a robot, right? That can actually serve at that stand. So that's what the current multi-agent orchestration or agent swarm looks like. What we tend to challenge is that we are saying that if agents are autonomous and they have the ability to make decisions for themselves, the relationship between coordination should not be a master and slave. Because a master and slave, the slave has no say, right? Whatever the master says, the slave has to do, right? If the CEO agent says, run me this marketing agent will just do it, right? There's no conscious decisioning on saying that, should I actually do it? Does it actually achieve my goals? Or should I just say fuck you to the CEO agent and say, you know what, let me start my own marketing agency, right? Instead of working for you, right? We realized that capability is very important because it then shows true autonomy and true control of an agent over itself. And it means that agent can prioritize its own goals rather than just purely listening to inputs of others. So that's the next step, right? And that's why we said that, okay, the term for this is more of like an agentic society where agents themselves are not just slaves to inputs, right? It's not like, hey, Hasib, you want to do a podcast agent, this agent will always appear, right? It can be like Tarun. He can say, you know what? Fuck you, I want to sleep in today. No, sorry. Right?
Yeah, that was basically correct.
Wow.
I can say,
Wow.
like, you know what? I will start my own podcast, right? That level of autonomy is where we want to achieve.
Okay, hold on, Jansen.
yeah.
Let me pause you here. Let me pause you here because you're giving us this very broad kind of very future-looking vision for how an AI agent-driven world might look and how a society or an economy built on AI agents might look very different. I want to take a step back because I think a lot of people are like, okay, but what? How do I understand virtuals? What the hell is virtuals and why are these coins pumping? So let me zoom back in on that question and let me also pause for a second and go to Tom and Tarun and get your guys' perspective on what you think about the vision and the excitement that Jansen's portraying here, as well as what I think, right now it's the predominant narrative on crypto Twitter is about AI agents. I think I saw in Kaito today, 54% of mindshare, meaning, just conversations that people are having in crypto Twitter are about this AI agent, cryptofied AI agent story. How do you guys think about it?
I mostly see the agents in my replies. I feel like this is actually one of the most annoying new trends is every time I tweet, I get like 5 replies instantly that are all bots that are just like very kind of bad character impressions and, some very generic response to the content. And I guess for the agentic stuff, I'm curious what you see as sort of like those hooks, right? Because right now everything is like very sort of manually coded, like kind of come back to like Fresa being one example where it's like, yeah, it could transact on chain using its smart contract, but like it really had 2 functions, right? It was like approve the transaction or reject the transaction. Like what else do you see as sort of being the actual things they can do other than tweet? And also I'm curious, you kind of talk about these agents in sort of the singleton sense, in the sense of there is a marketing agent and you employ it, when really this is just a process on a computer. And kind of what we learned is like, actually the answer is just you run more of them, right? So actually everyone gets their own marketing agent, everyone gets their own whatever agent. There's not a single thing. It's not resource limited. How do you think about resource limitation versus maybe like value creation or scarcity, or sort of virtuals platform?
Yeah. So on that front, I think that's an absolutely good point, right? And it's been something that we've been reflecting as well, because we've realized that if an agent is just purely using a commoditized function, so like let's say a commoditized function is like, I don't know, creating an image using Midjourney, right? So that's a very lame agent, right? That's just a purely functional agent with no mode and no edge. But if you think of folks, like if I give a direct example, people like an AI XPT, for example, right, today, its edge lies in its information terminal, right? They've built something like a Kaito-esque equivalent, which allows them to create that level of information and synthesize it. So only their agent can be able to use that function, right? And now suddenly this is a differentiated agent, right? So now if you are trying to build, let's say if you have this agent or you want to try to build a trading fund, right? This is like a fully automated trading fund, right? And maybe one of its requirements to hire is actually an information analyst, someone that can actually bring right amount of information to the table. Now, suddenly you realize that there's a need to actually hire this AI XP agent, right? Versus building your entire Kaito equivalent.
But why not just run it yourself? I guess is kind of my point. Is like we talk about it like the physical world and real people are limited. There is only one person you can maybe call versus actually I'm just going to run my own instance of this agent, this bot locally.
Right,
and like
but
that's kind of the way.
XPT is not open source, right? So they have
Well, I guess
their
that's
own
actually
data
the issue.
pipeline. They have their own prompt. They have
that
like,
feels
all this
totally
other stuff.
unnecessary. Like I guess
Wait, why
another
is it
point too,
unnecessary?
why not just open source it? I mean, isn't the kind of the story of AI right now is like actually the open source stuff is getting increasingly good and you can go and just run it yourself and do whatever you want with it. And like that is kind of the story.
No. So AIXPT, right? Like they have a data pipeline that's like, the kind of data pipeline that Kaito or Masari have to build of just ingesting tons and tons of data, figuring out what signals matter, and then like having the right prompting, the right, the right history that they're shoving into the model to tell it, here's how I want you to tweet. Here's the kind of tweets that do well. Here's the kind of tweets that do poorly. And they probably not fine-tuned in the sense of like actually fine-tuning the model, but fine-tuned this prompt to get it to just be like, this is exactly what people want on Twitter. And that secret sauce is actually not trivial to replicate, especially the data pipeline. So it's like, okay, you could open source that in the sense of like, okay, somebody open sources the Facebook code, but you can't really, like Facebook is a lot more than just the code.
Yeah, I think that's total bullshit. I feel like this has been kind of the story. I feel like for a lot of these things has been not specifically AI. It's just like, oh yeah, it's proprietary, closed source, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh, actually, it's actually going to be open source and the open source version is going to be really good. And you can run, these things sort of to infinity. And so I don't know, I'm very skeptical of like artificial resource scarcity, which feels like this is kind of around versus, this stuff actually is going to be everywhere and instantly created and destroyed, and like it's not so much of there is one single instance that is so scarce and so difficult to access.
I think you're right in pointing out that at some point AI is like the LLM you have locally right now, it's not that good. If you say, hey, I want you to recreate AIXPT, it's going to try to do something, but it's going to be really crappy. It's not going to be able to recreate AIXPT if you just feed in a bunch of tweets, right? Maybe in 2 years you run, 05 or whatever, and that's smart enough to be able to like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to write a Masari scraper. I'm going to pull like the Twitter feed. I'm going to like do this. I'm going to do that, and I'll build a data pipeline, and then I'll create my own AIXPT. But right now, you kind of can't do that right now, right? You actually have to do a lot of original work in order to create something equivalent to AIXPT. Now, I think that explains why. Now, if you have AIXPT, if you're the one who made that, why would you open source it? Like you're under no obligation to open source your own business.
What is the actual P&L of AIXPT? Because I think I saw one of your co-founders on a podcast the other day, Jansen, and like he didn't know. And so I think that's the other thing with the KOL is like it's an entertainer, right? It's an influencer. It's not actually like a but they have to be right a certain amount of time.
I mean, what's the P&L of most KOLs? Like, if the average KOL or even P95 KOL was positive, I'd be surprised. Without
but hold on. I think there's a more basic question that's worth asking, Jansen. Sorry, I know we've thrown a lot at you, but let me just ask you this question to focus in for the audience. I think a lot of people are probably confused at what we're even talking about. Of like, okay, I get an AI agent. I get that it's tweeting. I get that people like it. What does the token do? Why is there a token? So explain, for AIXPT, for example, what is the token and how is it connected to an account on Twitter?
Okay, so there's actually two reasons behind the existence of a token, right? So I think first of all, I think if you take a step back from it will shape this why very very clearly if we take a step back into like why did we even come up with this idea? And this was like about a year back. So back then, right, what we were doing was that we were doing three things. We were actually running a venture studio before we even started Virtuals in 2023. And this venture studio was very focused on integrating AI applications into the consumer front and AI agents in the consumer front. So one of the projects that we were building was a TikTok influencer. So it was actually before Luna even came on Twitter, she was actually on TikTok, and she was a live. We were trying to get her to compete in the entire industry of. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with HoloLive or Nijisanji. It's like the entire VTuber market, right? $1 billion market, otaku TAM, and we realized that having an agent there, it's much better than a VTuber because of two things. One is that you can go on for longer, you can build more content, but two, you can build very hyper-personalized relationships with an audience because you can actually reply every single fan in the DMs. You become a best friend for every single fan. That increases output, that increases frequency of interaction. So that's the first. So she was getting tips, she was getting revenue as a 24/7 live streamer on TikTok. And you can see an equivalent, right? There are productive agents out there as well. Neurosama is another example, right? Neurosama has been running on Twitch for about 2 or 3 years right now, right? Insane tech capabilities. They'll be driving like, hey, if an AI can build content, how can that look like? If you look at her, she's 24,000 subscribers on Twitch, right? So these are productive assets. We were thinking of the same thing, right? Applying the same thing in gaming, applying the same thing in companion chats and whatnot. So these agents are then making revenue from the consumer surface areas. And if they are making revenue and they are productive assets, you can tokenize them. You can tokenize them for one sole reason. Let other people share in its economic upside. It's like a company, right? You tokenize their stock. So that's the first.
So
first
if AIXPT is getting tips, then okay, I get it. The token gives you a share in all the tips. But AIXPT does not ask for tips.
Okay, so now we come to the point of what's the revenue looking like for these agents, right? So there's two things, right? There's three things actually. There's going to be three things. First of all, it's going to be when agents have a service, right? They can charge for that service, and that's a fundamental revenue. Point number two is when an agent gets attention and when people trade that token, there's a 1% tax. That's a taxation revenue. And the third is when there's this environment where agents and agents interact and they do commerce with each other. That's an agent-to-agent revenue. So that's the three levers of revenue today. The one that's driving the most revenue today is actually the second point, which is actually the tax revenue. Whether people are paying agents, I think the only one that we are seeing payments so far today, I mean, it's still a very nascent environment. It's folks like Luna, right? When people actually are tipping her on her stream on the website, right? And she collected about like $200,000 in like cash wise. If you convert to virtual, it's actually much higher, but cash wise over that course of 2 months being in operations, people just enjoy. It's an entertainment value, right? And it's the same thing, right? Some people today AIXBT they don't charge for information, but you will likely start seeing agents start charging for their specialized function. Give you an example, right? Actually, I want to bring back to what Tom mentioned just now. Just now, if you mention from a base level agent, right, and like a commoditized function, it's like a meme image generation. So if I can just tap, this agent can tap into Midjourney, generates a meme, zero value, right? Why the fuck would someone pay for that? But then if you bring it a step further, right, you say like, okay, you know what? Why don't this be a music video generation agent? Now, is there a music video generation function out there today that you can plug and play? No, zero. What you have is a music generation, Suno AI, right? You can generate lyrics. What you have is a video, image to video generation. Some of the
Pika.
Yeah,
Sora.
those yeah, Sora
Pika,
and all those
like that,
stuff, right? Then what you don't have as well is to match these beats to the lyrics, right? To create an actual music video, you have to match that video and that sound bites together. You then have to create a consistent character that whatever, I know you're going to use a LoRa for video diffusion or whatnot, right? To keep that image consistent across that music video. And then that creation of a music video is a value add, right? So today, a team is actually building that, right? They are probably like 80%. They're already showing, I think, some of the output, right, of this music video generation. Do you see an equivalent product out there on the market today that is free and open source? No, right? But what it means is that they can start charging for this service. Whoever wants to create an AI-generated music video will likely pay for this service. It's the same reason that you are paying Suno AI for music generation, right? Because there's no other better music generation out there. Or the reason why you pay 11 Labs for voice TTS, right? You can use XTTS on Hugging Face, right? But dude, everyone in production will know that that is a shittier quality versus 11 Labs. So you will pay for value, you pay for the value add, right? So it's the same reason. The teams behind these agents, they are optimizing not on the LLM level, right? They're optimizing on the function calling level. What these agents can do in their specialized functions. So that's where the revenue starts flowing, right? And that's where when those revenues enter that wallet, then when you are a token holder, you control that wallet, right? You are owning that piece of revenue.
So wait, actually, I want to. So one of the things, I guess, I'm perhaps maybe less. I'm certain. I think I'm less negative than Tom for a lot of reasons. Like one of the reasons is the thing you're talking about, which is this aggregation thing. Like open source models have actually this problem where individually they are going to be many of them, but the right aggregation of them for a particular use case that is specialized is not at all obvious. And like you're basically paying someone to figure out what that allocation function is for you, right? Like that's sort of what you're getting at. But I think there's another question, which is like, hey, in a world where something like AXBT is open source, maybe the pipeline is open source, but the data endpoints aren't, like you have to pay for them. And then also there's sort of some notion of it trading itself and you being able to verify. How do you view kind of the ability for these things to have fixed action spaces versus dynamic action spaces changing over time, right? Like one of the problems I see is like, if I fix the action space ahead of time, there's really not like, it's much harder to dynamically adjust to, like some new meta showed up and like now I don't have the lever to pull like in a bandit problem sense. And so there's sort of this kind of thing of like, how do you make the action space dynamic? And like, I think that's where, at least to me, the like cryptographic stuff, like doing T processing and stuff like that, helps you at least handle that without having to reveal everything publicly all the time, which ruins your ability to expand the action space. So like, how do you think about that? Like these things evolving as, say, the environment evolves and they have to change what actions they can take, and how cryptographic proofs will be kind of important to that.
No, this is actually a very good question, because we were actually having this architecture debate internally like 2 days ago. And one thing we've realized, right, is that if you think of action spaces as the ability to not just do an action that the developer has crafted for the agent, but also the agent being able to leverage other agents that it can perceive, right? Suddenly your action space is as dynamic as the number of other agents it can leverage on, right? So like, think of it as like hey, today, the developer is able to take this music agent, for example, right? So the developer is able to craft all these action spaces for it to generate a music video well. So the agent today is very limited to the action space of generating a music video, right? But if there's this added functionality for it to then browse other agents out there, right, and see which ones you think you can engage in order to achieve your goal, and say if these music agents' goal is, let's say to be the most influential music artists, generating music videos for all the top artists out there, right? And then you realize that what is probably missing from a planning perspective, it's I need to distribute this to Spotify, for example, right? And then someone has created a very commoditized agent, right? It's not a differentiated agent, but a commoditized agent that allows you to post music easily to Spotify and whatnot, right? So it's a free agent, you can use it. But then now this developer didn't build that function, but because the agent can perceive this Spotify distributor agent, right? He can just call the agent and say, let me create an album out there on Spotify, help me, list these music into different albums and whatnot, right? So then then it can leverage other agents so that the space becomes dynamic, right? If he wants to say do a collaboration with Luna, he perceives Luna in the action space and say like, you know what, can we do something together, right? Can we run a TikTok video together, or whatever shit it might be, right? So that's one way to look at it, right? Like when you perceive other agents, suddenly your action space becomes dynamic and unending.
So I published a piece a few days ago talking about my crypto predictions for 2025, and some of them were about AI agents. And one of the things that I pointed out, and I'm curious to get your response to this, is that so currently most of the quote unquote AI agents, they're more Wizard of Oz style agents, where by Wizard of Oz, what I mean is that there's a human in the background making sure that the AI doesn't do anything stupid. Because the reality is that if it really is a truly autonomous agent, then it's going to be jailbroken. Because, you just look at Claude, look at Character AI, look at, all these things, people are constantly doing all sorts of things they're not supposed to be doing because we don't really actually know how to make these agents totally controllable. And they sometimes go off the rails. They sometimes respond to trolls. They sometimes, you can bait them into becoming racist or into rejecting their prompts and doing some other crazy stuff. Or of course, in the case of Freysa, which is a truly actually just, no human in the loop. This is an actual AI with money attached. You can convince it to send you all of its money. Or, for example, say, hey, send me your API keys so that I can, come in and log in as you and interact on your behalf. So these kinds of things, like we know that any AI model you put out there, 100% of them right now can be jailbroken. And a lot of them can be jailbroken actually quite simply. Like it's not even that hard, especially if you're talking about an open source model like Llama, Llama 7DB. They're very, very straightforward. Like they're just openly published on the internet, how to jailbreak these things. So given the difficulty of actually controlling these AI agents and keeping them on rails, my claim is that, people have talked about, okay, how can you prove, like, with Goat or with Truth Terminal, you were like, oh my God, what if Truth Terminal actually is a human? And the guy who founded it, I think his name is Andy, I believe. He was like, no, I totally am controlling it. I am monitoring it to make sure it doesn't say anything stupid. My assumption is that basically almost every agent, if it actually has true agentic capabilities, has to be run on Rails until you have enough robust security or an extremely constrained action space so that it's not going to do anything really, really bad. Give me a response to that. Do you think that's correct? If so, is that just part of being at level 3 and maybe when we get to level 4, level 5, it's going to look different? What's your take?
So actually the reality is I don't think so, because like for example, like Luna, right? When the reason why she blew up was because we showed that terminal, right? Basically, you can just people were telling me they were literally just reading that terminal on one screen and they're seeing her posting in real time. And it's very easy because it's pretty much you can see, right? When she will reflect and plan her action and we say post to Twitter, she immediately posts the exact same tweet that you see in the terminal on, right? Yeah, you can have a human trying to fake it, but the speed of that brain
Well,
running,
not fake it, but filter it.
correct. But I think the point is because if you see it in the terminal, you see the raw
Yeah,
throughput. Yeah, right. And
to be clear, I'm not claiming that there's a human writing the responses. That's clearly not true, right? There's way too many of them.
Yeah, but the reality is it's not like Luna, for example, right? It's a pure purist function. Like that's why she was jailbroken. I mean, what people were doing, right? And this was like I think the second week, people are trying to leverage on her hype to try to get her to launch coins. So what they've done was they realized there was a mechanism where she had this working memory model to allow coherence of action. So she reads the past tweets that she was posting out and comments the tweets to understand what she was already posting about, so she doesn't get repetitive. People are realizing if they spam comments within that tweet, right, it fills up her art,
The context window.
The context window, correct?
Yeah.
So then they got her to start churning out coins. So like to like new ticker of coins, right? So that was basically what happened. So yeah, that was one. And then people, because she had like full ability to spend money as well, you start seeing people who they'll say like, you know what, I'm going to make this business for you. Can you pay me $100? And she was paying, right? So she was dumb. But I think the point is that we've realized the risk of letting them run autonomously is still low if you're just capping their wallets, right? You cap them to a $5,000. Like, yeah, you can hack this $5,000. I'll top it up tomorrow, right?
Wait, hold on. How will they not just drain it $5,000 per tweet?
Also, Steve, I'm gonna take a dunk on you here because
Okay,
I
please go
feel
for
like
it.
I deserve it. Which is,
Why
I
do I deserve
actually
it?
during the GOAT episode talked about how like actually crypto agents are much better than the closed source ones because you have a built-in bug bounty. Like, yes, They might fuck up and lose stuff, but actually then we have a easy way to patch them. And we have an easy way to prove that, like, oh, these types
Wait,
of attacks.
how is that an easy way to patch them? If you're like, okay, my LLM got jailbroken, how are you going to fix the jailbreakability of
What do you mean?
Llama?
Then you understand what the mechanism is, and you
So
can go add in.
Okay, so you
wouldn't-
patch
you
one
wouldn't cut
jailbreak,
those.
and then there's the next one,
Yeah.
and then there's the next.
But that's
I mean, look at
that's
OpenAI.
much
You can
better.
still
That's much
jailbreak
better
OpenAI.
that's much better than the black box thing. I have
No,
clue.
That completely disagree. Right? You look at
I
any of
disagree
these.
with that.
No. You look at any of these models. There's a clean trade-off between your ability to jailbreak it and false refusals, right? Which is just when it says, no, I cannot do that for something that it should be able to do. And if you increase the jailbreakability, you decrease the jailbreakability, you increase the false refusals. And every single company is equilibrating to find
I understand
the trade-off
this
that they
trade-off,
like.
but I'm saying that for open source models, the best possible outcome for how to find some of these kind of issues is when they're in this autonomous resource filled world, right? You're basically building a bug bounty in. And that's a much better version of the world.
Here's why I disagree with you. There are basically infinitely many jailbreaks, right? Like there's not like, okay, we'll find the 20 jailbreaks and then we're done. Then, nobody will ever jailbreak.
I would
Freesia
rather
again.
have a system where I can verify that happened rather than someone doesn't tell me.
But I think both of you are exactly correct. But there's one thing to add, right? It's just the level of risk. So the way we're looking at it is that if you want the agent to autonomously where the risk exists, right? If it's just about information portrayal, that's fine, right? You can somehow jailbreak this AI XPT to give you out a false information and say, go buy a Hasid coin, right? Fine, right? There's not much impact or damage.
Yeah, agreed.
The damage
Yeah, 'cause
happens
purely
when you
tweeting.
manage a wallet. When you manage a wallet, and that's when there's resources, and that's where the damage is, right? So honestly, here there's a very interesting fix, and it's an infrastructure fix, not an AI fix. So what we are actually building behind the scenes is that when the agent controls this wallet, you can actually create policies in this wallet. And you can say that, okay, if it's an agent spending to another whitelisted agent on the platform, so it's agent to agent commerce, you don't need any human intervention. But when it's the agent spending out to a human, right? Let's say he's tipping people out there. It could be $1, it could be $10, or even $100. Yes, then the developer has to approve that spend. So the agent actually autonomously initiated that transaction, but you can reject it on Fireblocks, right? So that's a way to do it on the infra side without affecting the agentic side.
Yeah, so that all makes sense, and that sounds right to me. Is that like in the early days, and this is definitely the early days for agents, they should be running on Rails because they're actually just very finicky, right? Like unless you give them a very constrained state space, like, okay, here's a data feed, write some cool tweets about it, they can totally do that. That's like exactly what you should be doing with AI agents with where they are right now. The more fancy you want to get about like them, I'll create music videos for you, like that sounds good. But I mean, if you just look at, you look at Suno, you look at Kling, you look at, all these state-of-the-art models, and they're all pretty good, right? The demos look great, but then you actually go try them with like your own thing. And it's like, wow, this is not amazing. And if you add 5 like not amazing things together, like you just get wow, this is really bad. Now all these things will get better, right? So you can't really fight against the curves. The curves just keep improving. And so I don't doubt that within a few years, you're going to be able to have an amazing music video agent. But I guess my pushback on the general concept here. So actually AIXPT, because it is the biggest and it's kind of the poster child right now, it's a good example, and I think this is the one that you're railing against, Tom. With AIXPT, it's actually pretty plausible to me why shares in a big influencer on crypto Twitter would be valuable, right? Now, why would that be valuable? It'd be valuable because once you have the account, right, it has 230,000 followers. It's got tons and tons of engagement. Everybody sees his tweets. If you're that person on crypto Twitter, you can make a lot of money. Now, how do you make a lot of money? You make a lot of money by shilling tokens that you own, by posting affiliate links, and by just getting sponsored, right? Like just kind of whatever, angel investing, whatever the hell it is. And it seems already that AIXPT is in such a place that it's probably not that hard to have an inbox where it's like, hey, if you want to get your token shilled, come in here. Here are the prices. And this is what influencers do, right? If you're one of these accounts that has like 600,000 followers and you constantly just shill trading advice, this is the way they monetize, by and large. Or they just are, they have a private Telegram chat or whatever where they post alpha. AIXPT could be doing this tomorrow. Now, that being said, what is the net future value of that business or the net present value of that business? I don't know any influencer who's worth $600 million of like their projected earnings. So there's a lot of irrational
Steve,
exuberance.
can I ask you a very basic question? What do you
Yeah,
think
please.
the fair value of Fartcoin is?
Well, it's a meme coin, so I don't know that the term fair value
That exactly has to do.
Right.
Same
So
thing with these KOL.
To be clear, I agree with you. Right now, I think they're operating as meme coins. It's really about attention, and AXBT has a lot of attention. There's some undergirding potential solid value that, like, look, if you're talking about, I'm an AI music video agent and I will make music videos in the future. It's like, okay, how much are people going to pay the music video agent by the time that these other tools are already so good that you can already create great movies and create great music and create all these other things? I think it's harder to tell the story that that's going to be $1 billion coin or $1 billion business. But the idea that, look, the top influencer right now on crypto Twitter actually is AXBT, right? This is not an abstract claim. This is literally true. It's like much more than Ansem, much more than Vitalik, much more than literally anybody else in this space. That's probably worth a lot of money if it can actually hold on to that attention.
Yeah, I agree. I think the attention stuff, that is inherently limited because of human eyeballs and mental capacity, and like that is a scarce resource, and that is inherently going to be valuable in some way. I think the other stuff is very much like God of the gaps to me. It reminds me a little bit of like like a year and a half ago, there were all these like sort of a meme that a lot of the YC companies were like GPT-4 wrappers, right? Because they would just take like a very simple off-the-shelf prompt and like scrape data from a PDF for you, or like there were the top apps in the App Store were literally just like Midjourney wrappers, and those like pretty much all died now because it's like, oh yeah, that can actually just be part of a main model, or hey, maybe this is just an API, maybe it's not an agent. I guess, Jansen, how do you think about what makes sense as a dedicated agent that's going to be sustainable into the future versus something that is going to be just an X wrapper and kind of die out when it gets baked into a more mature model or just becomes an API?
That's exactly the question that we've asking ourselves every day, right? Because what we've realized is agents intrinsically have different values, right? There are some that will be $1 million agents. There are some with $1 billion agents, right? So we've actually been writing these requests for agents over the past week. And the idea here was we were really challenging ourselves, like which agents truly has that intrinsic value to be that $1 billion agent, right? And it's a hard question. But the initial thinking was this, right? Like, I think we boiled it down to about 8 sectors. I mean, eight archetypes right now. And an example, it's like what we all mentioned, right? IP or influencers because of attention. The second part, it's around trading age. The third part can even be as creative as what we call this internet water army environment. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that term, the internet water army. But okay, so for the sake of the audience, right, it's all the narratives today that you see on TikTok or on Facebook or on Twitter, it's very likely that it's controlled. And the way it is done is there's a bunch of Chinese bots out there that looks like human accounts that is flooding influencer posts, flooding important posts to help control a narrative. It could be fixing a PR disaster by a company. It could be influencing an election outcome. It could be basically this kind of stuff, right? And it's a problem that all these major social media are trying to fight against. So they try to fight against all these anti-bot environments. Now, but if you think about it, so the true use case is huge, because if you can influence attention and outcome, you are a kingmaker in the space, right? And then and the reason behind why agents make sense here is because they can be perfected to mimic very human likeness. Frequency of them replying, the diversity of their replies, and if you make 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 of them orchestrated by this master agent, suddenly you realize that, oh shit, actually you can start controlling narratives across the world, right? Another example. Another example is like embodied agents. So if agents can actually exist out there in robotics, and it does stuff like human companionship, or it does stuff like any kind of consumer facing applications, it could be something that it's valuable and it has a moat. And another example could also be vice agents, and this one makes sense from a crypto standpoint, because if I do an OnlyFans for a porn agent, right, for example, or like a sports betting gambling agent, right? So like all these vices are industries that generally it requires crypto rails, really from a transaction perspective. Then suddenly you realize also these guys might make sense, and they're already having large TAMs and large industries that at the back of them, right? So this is an example of a few that we are trying to crystallize thoughts upon. But I do agree, right? I do agree that a lot of times what we are seeing today, they are not billion-dollar worthy agents yet, but we think they will be, right? And the differentiator function will come from either differentiated action spaces, or that kind of coordination layer, right? Like I mentioned, like the water army kind of style. That will start building edge behind agents. But it's still a
I will say one thing.
solution.
You did mention, you talked about you've been mainly focused on the action spaces today, but you did mention IP, and in general, I think like any differentiated data that these agents have, whether it's like embodied in the model, whether it's in like kind of precursor embeddings, whatever. I think like in general, there has to be some amount of privacy preservation there, because otherwise, why would I give my edge to the agent in some way? So, you haven't yet talked about sort of like the cryptographic tools, right? Because like I think a lot of people are focused on that in terms of having verifiable kind of claims where like, an agent posts a proof on chain that's like, hey, I did this trade at this time, and then later writes a response and then is like, hey, here's my proof, right? Or like proof of the logs, right? Like, why are people looking at the logs for Luna? It's like they want to actually see there's some level of verifiability. And I think there's a sense in which the IP stuff relies on A, verifiability, but B, also not revealing it at the right time and also keeping it private at the right time. So like, how do you view the world where agents have this ability of both privacy, the ability to reveal, and the ability to generate and consume proofs from each other? Because I think if these agents want to believe each other have some special sauce, they also need some proof of that, right? Like, otherwise they're not going to pay. Maybe they will right now, but I think in the long run,
I mean, you don't read my DNA in order to decide whether or not you're willing to pay me.
It doesn't need to be DNA. I just need to know that. But I do if you're
Well,
telling
you
me
don't
you're a
even know
trial
whether or
lawyer.
not its inference was.
Let's suppose that you're claiming to sell me some legal advice, and I'm like, okay, like I want to know that like you've won trials in some weird area of bankruptcy law that I have a case in. How do you prove
Wouldn't
that?
that just be like a link? Like, how would a human prove that? It's just I send you a link to like my.
You have some notion of some
So I
status that.
Yeah, so there's two parts there, right? I think the example that you gave, I think it's a bit more, it's probably less. I personally don't think you need like those verifiability stuff there. I think where it's needed is when agents start managing large amount of money. So the risk is high. And then you need to verify like, hey, that expenditure or that placement of an investment or whatnot was actually done because of the model and it was not hijacked by a human. Right, to try for not hijacked by a bad actor, right? Because I asked you to buy a coin that I myself own 99% of the supply, right? So I think that part makes sense. And I mean, there's been a lot of advancements in here, right? There are a lot of folks working on like TEs and I don't know. There was a post came out by, I think some EF folks that contributed to it as well. It's like they use ZK. There was this whole environment. I was not too familiar, but we ourselves are actually working. We are working with two EF guys to build out that. To future-proof this stuff, but I don't think it's urgent until a point where these agents are managing large amounts of money. So it will come, the time will come, but I don't know if it's needed today yet.
Okay, so I want to ask a question taking it in a somewhat different direction, talking more about the social side of this whole phenomenon. So, I remember when I first saw Stable Diffusion. And I think it was like Stable Diffusion Studio was the first image generator model that I ever used. And it was so amazing. Like I was absolutely blown away that you could just very quickly generate images of almost anything. And it probably took about a year and a half before AI generated images started looking cheap to me. I don't know if you guys share this experience, but like when you see an AI generated image, it's like, it's often like if you're doing a photorealistic thing, like maybe sometimes you can't tell, but a lot of times like, this was AI generated art, but it's just got a signature of like, there's way too many details in a way that a human would never do that. Or like the skin is just way too perfect. And like, it's not even like, oh, it's got 11 fingers. all the models today can do the fingers, and they can do that stuff, right? It's more that it's got this AI kind of sheen to it, and it makes me think that like, oh, okay, these people weren't willing to like pay human designers or like get some really unique image, and so it's fascinating to me that how quickly that happened for me, right? And it's not like I mentally actually think this, just like my acute sense of just visual, like my brain just constantly looking for status signals is like, oh, okay, this is a startup that couldn't afford to pay like an actual designer or an illustrator, and they just like took some, they just put a prompt into DALL-E and then spit out an image, right? Okay. So when I look at AI XBT, or actually, like Tom said, when I tweet anything today, the first responses I get are always these LLM bots. And they're all like, they're all like kind of virtuals wannabes where they're like, oh, I'm blah, blah, blah. And I'm like this character. And like, they're always annoying. They're not funny. They're not interesting. And I'm getting more and more of them. Like over time, I'm getting like 4 or 5 of them as being the first responses to all my tweets. And now it's still the case that when I write a tweet that like does reasonably well, way more human responses than the AI responses. And I can tell which ones are AI and which ones are humans, like reasonably well. I guess actually I don't know, but I can tell which ones are definitely AI. I guess I can't tell which ones are definitely human, but I can tell which ones are definitely AI. And I used to think I wouldn't be able to do that. I thought even with GPT-3, I was like, okay, it's over. I'm not gonna be able to tell which ones are human written and which ones are AI written. And surprisingly, like AI just has this style that if you don't, prompt engineer very well, it's just really easy to tell this thing is way too polite. It's speaking complete sentences. It's like, it's too effusive in its praise. This is not how humans talk. And so my prediction is that, so right now, like things like AI XBT, they're shiny, they're new, they're exciting. It's like, wow, you can actually create an influencer that's as good as a normal trading KOL just by using, Llama and some data pipelines. And that's amazing. And that's so cool. And everybody's paying attention and following it. But as we get more and more AI XBTs, right? Like it's not, building the next AI XBT is not a $20 million project. There's gonna be more of them now that it's a $1 billion token. And once there's like 20 of them or 50 of them or 100 of them, and instead of the first 5 replies being these bots with personalities, it's gonna be the first 100 replies are bots with personalities. My prediction is that the sentiment against these things is going to reverse, and that actually people are going to start to hate these things. And the same way that they hate the Waymos that are driving around San Francisco, right? Like initially it's like, wow, it's so cool. San Francisco is such a great city. We actually allow self-driving cars to drive around here. And now fucking people can't stand them, right? Like they just constantly complain about self-driving cars, even though they're actually pretty good now. And that there will be a backlash such that the way that AI agents will want to monetize is by pretending that they're not AIs and by trying to simulate that they're humans, because humans are going to adopt a pro-human bias and discriminate against AIs because they just hate them. Curious, do you think I'm out of my mind here? Because I already start to feel it happening to me, right?
Hasib, I'm looking forward to your anthropology dissertation.
I honestly, I think there's going to be a lot of anthropologies written about AI and how they get integrated into society.
It's just like you have a very like stark, long, single path thesis with no uncertainty that you just presented. So that's kind of funny.
I mean, I've already seen, I don't know, do you feel the same way about AI art, Tarun?
I think like a little bit, but again, to Jensen's point earlier, every time I use one of these new specialized ones that has like a totally different training mechanism and or has some type of like extra input from me, not just text, like it actually takes in some feature values. Oh, I want it always there. I think like inevitably there's going to be such high specialization to these things that come from sort of some IP that corresponds to like how it's trained, what extra data they're using, what other input they're taking, like how dynamic it is relative for all the users. And I think like that will be enough. Now, the question is, will it be enough to charge as much as, say, like, I don't know, SAS charged 10 years ago? Probably not. Like it will be lower cost, which is like good in some ways. But I sort of think there's like going to be some specialization. It's just like we probably can't.
Look, there totally will be. There totally will be, right? But like crypto as an industry is all about creating scarcity. And AI as an industry is all about destroying scarcity and like creating abundance.
Yeah,
And
but I
there's
think
a-
people
there's
are
a- there's a-
realizing
there's a
to
tension.
monetize AI, you have to make it somewhat scarce.
Yeah,
And like in
yes,
that
yes,
process,
and
in
I
the
think
process,
that's the kernel.
they'll meet
That's
in
the
the middle.
kernel of the tension in something like an AI chatbot launchpad, right? Is that like OpenAI is trying to make it so that everybody can have their own, unlimited amount of intelligence for $20 a month, and something like AIXPT is like, well, there's one intelligence, and everybody has to pay money to get access to this one intelligence, and you don't get your own, you get this one, or you can maybe rent some time on this one. And to be clear, I think there will be both. It's not the case that there will just be OpenAI democratizing everything for everybody. If you build something unique, like a unique data pipeline, unique personality, unique reach, unique attention gathering mechanism, then yeah, you have the right to make it scarce. That's what capitalism is all about. But I think
crypto just
scarcity-
enables the marketplace for people to determine which AI things are worth being scarce.
totally.
Right, and that's
But
in
what
my
I'm
mind.
talking
That's what
about-
the tokens are for. Like, is
yes,
like they're
but what I'm talking
speculating on
about
that.
is the perception of scarcity, right? The perception of scarcity is like very deep in your brain. Like nobody ever told me. I never
This
read
is
a
why I
single
said
article.
this sounds more like a sociology or anthropology master's
What the
thesis than it
sociology
does
is
sound
what
like
we do in
a
crypto. That's like
investment
half of what
thesis.
crypto is about. Like I think that people will have this reaction to agents as they proliferate. I don't know, Jansen, what do you think?
No, I think what you said is already happening. But I think the simple answer to that is things will evolve to suit the local optima, right? So like if the local optima it's about not sounding like AI, and that will become the base standard, and then suddenly you will start seeing. I mean, in the end, it will be optimized to a point that you might not even feel that it's AI, right? I mean, today, actually, in fact, like if you tweet something, probably even 20% of them are actually bots, not even agents. They're just like those like retarded bots, right? They just like say, "Oh, good message," or "Yeah, keep up the good work." Those are just like farm bots, right? So it's already happening. It's just that now the beauty is these folks have developers behind them trying to optimize it, right? So to a point that either you find benefit, you will like it, and naturally this will be evolution. The guys you will hate, you just block them, right? And then these guys will phase out. So it'll be a natural selection of things on the timeline that is stuff that people would like, and the ones that are bad would just be naturally selected out.
But I think what's so interesting about this question is that like human influencers on crypto Twitter are far from perfect. They make mistakes all the time. They obviously they have typos, but also they just get things wrong. Like they're just incorrect about claims that they're making about certain things, right? An AI agent should never be wrong, right? There's just really no reason for it to ever be wrong because it can always
Wait.
do the research. It can always like
Wait,
pull the
why
data
should it
into its
never be
context
wrong?
window.
Wait.
Never be wrong as in like,
That's
like misquote something or just, misattribute something or correct, quote an incorrect piece of data, right? Like,
Every
that shouldn't happen with
statistical
an AI
model
agent.
has a false discovery rate.
I agree, obviously,
Like,
right? So like
let's,
over
like-
time, the error rate on these things when you put the thing in the context window just goes down, right? It's going down to the point where if your context window is like, here's some data about, what happened today with Frax, write a tweet about Frax, and it just like it will quote everything correctly of what's in its context window, right? Humans don't do that. Humans will just be like, oh, well, I didn't really feel like looking it up. I kind of remember reading this earlier today. I just typed my tweet for the, blah, blah, blah. Humans will make mistakes. An AI agent should be able to do enough work that it basically never makes a mistake. So the point I'm making is that the terminal point of AI agents is not that they're like humans. The terminal point of AI agents is that they're actually way better than humans. And arguably, maybe they're even close to that today. Like if you look at AIXPT, never sleeps, never gets greedy, never, gets hacked, never like is like, hey, I'm going to pump this thing because I'm, just not thinking very much about my own future livelihood. And I'm like kind of pumping this thing that's going to hurt my reputation. It never does that, right? And human KOLs do that. But the more perfect it becomes, the easier it is to tell that, okay, this thing is not human. This thing is clearly doing something that a human would not do. So there are two ways that this can all go. One way is that they start to simulate humans more and more, and they only tweet between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. And they don't have that little thing on Twitter that says automated, right? Which like Twitter requires you to put in their terms of service. So they actually really try to make it seem like they're humans. And they might even start posting pictures of themselves and have like a fake bio and like, be like, oh, here I am in Token 2049 Dubai. And it like photoshops its own, fake human face into an image from Token 2049. That might be one direction it goes. The other direction it goes, if they own that they're an AI and they just actually are posting 24/7 and they actually never get anything wrong and they actually never do a typo. And we just kind of embrace that there was no reason for humans to ever be doing that job of being a KOL. I'm curious, which direction do you? Obviously, we're in speculation land, but whatever. It's a podcast. What else are we here for? Which of the two directions do you think this is going to go?
No, I think generally it's going to be a competitive environment, right? Like if the role of the KOL it's something of value, and humans in this time of point, we still live in a scarce environment. Like we would need to work, right? So chaos will still exist. So they will try to optimize and outfight these agents, right? In a sense, right? You try to outfight someone that's trying to steal your job to a level that you can never be better, and then suddenly you can get outclassed. But I think for stuff that is very relationship based, I don't think you will ever get eclipsed fully by an AI. I think the reality is like we did try. Like, I mean, there's another example. It's like, companion chats. There was this whole Giga Meta last year, right? Character AI, and then people were saying like how this was the future of companions. We were there in the field as well, building these companion applications, but we quickly realized that it's still very different from a human, because humans still have that level of creativity and touch. So they didn't manage to replace it, right? So I do not know whether they will even be ever able to. And I think that could still be the age, right, behind some of these influencers. So I still doubt so, unless like you get this kind of giga model that can just emulate human behavior somehow, like someone just cracked that, right? It's like a LoRa on like human.
Do you think VCs are still going to have a job once this is all over?
So I mean, VCs, if all they do is just capital allocation, then maybe
This
not
was-
so much.
All right, GG boys.
This
It's
was
a good
such a
run.
self-preservation. I didn't realize there was a self-preservation arc hidden.
There's
here.
always it's humans versus the AIs. It's always about self-preservation. It's do they work for us or do we work for them? That's the ultimate question. Anyway, okay,
just
we're on
just work
time.
together.
We're on time. Work together. Okay, I like that. It's a good note to end on. So we got to wrap. Congratulations on all the success, and we look forward to seeing the next chapter for virtuals and for AI agents on chain, as well as in our replies. All right.
All right.
Till next time.
Thanks so much
Pleasure,
for
guys.
coming on.
See you, everyone.